The tension wasn't supposed to explode this quickly. What began as a welcome party in rural Alabama, a celebration meant to help a foreign fiancé feel accepted in a new country, slowly transformed into one of the most uncomfortable moments of the season. A man thousands of miles from home, a relationship already under pressure, an ex-boyfriend who never truly disappeared, and a confrontation that seemed inevitable from the moment they first met. For Rasit, arriving in America was supposed to be the beginning of a dream. Instead, it quickly became a test of trust, because before he could even settle into life in Alabama, one question kept haunting him. Why was Mallory's ex still so involved? And perhaps even more importantly, why did everyone else seem perfectly comfortable with it? As cameras followed the couple through another emotionally charged chapter of their journey, viewers watched a growing storm form beneath the surface. At first glance, the situation looked simple. Mallory was excited to show Rasit her world, her hometown, her friends, her culture, her version of Southern life. But beneath the smiles and introductions, deeper tensions were already brewing. Rasit had traveled from Turkey to build a future with the woman he loved. Yet almost immediately, he found himself navigating culture shock, unfamiliar customs, and social dynamics that felt completely foreign. And one of the biggest challenges wasn't Alabama itself. It was Brandon, Mallory's ex, the man who, despite the relationship ending, remained firmly planted in her life. According to footage shown during the episode, Brandon unexpectedly stopped by the couple's home to retrieve an item he had previously lent to Mallory. The interaction immediately felt awkward, and viewers could sense the discomfort in the room. While Mallory appeared hopeful that the two men might eventually find common ground, Rasit seemed far less optimistic. The tension wasn't hidden, it wasn't subtle, and it certainly wasn't resolved. For many viewers, this wasn't just another reality television disagreement. It represented something much larger. Different cultures, different expectations, different definitions of respect. What one person viewed as harmless friendship, another viewed as a threat, and that clash would soon move from private frustration to public confrontation. But before the welcome party even began, another issue emerged that changed the emotional tone of the entire episode. An issue far more serious than jealousy, prejudice. During an emotional conversation, Mallory revealed that some individuals invited to the event had made offensive comments regarding Rasit's background and religion. According to the episode, she ultimately chose to remove those people from the guest list. The revelation visibly affected both of them. For Rasit, the concern wasn't theoretical. He was preparing to enter a room full of strangers while already worrying about how he might be perceived. Not because of who he was, but because of assumptions others might make. The fear was real. The uncertainty was real. And suddenly the welcome party carried much higher stakes. This was no longer simply about fitting in. It was about feeling safe, feeling respected, feeling accepted. For viewers watching at home, the moment created an entirely new layer of emotional investment. Would the party become a celebration? Or would it expose deeper divisions hiding beneath the surface? As the day progressed, anticipation continued building. Mallory remained determined to give Rasit an authentic Southern experience. Guests arrived dressed for what she described as a playful white trash bash theme. American flags appeared. Camouflage clothing filled the scene. Laughter echoed across the gathering. For a brief moment, it looked like the night might actually exceed expectations. Rasit smiled. He interacted with guests. The atmosphere seemed lighter, more welcoming, more hopeful. But then, the person he least wanted to see showed up. Brandon had arrived, and in an instant, everything changed. The smiles began to fade. The body language shifted. The mood tightened. Because despite all attempts at keeping the peace, the unresolved conflict between these two men had never truly disappeared. It had simply been waiting for the right moment. And now, that moment had arrived. What happened next would become one of the most talked about scenes of the episode. A direct confrontation. Two men standing face to face. Different backgrounds, different perspectives, different ideas about respect. And neither appeared willing to back down. But what exactly triggered the confrontation? And why are fans now fiercely divided over who was actually in the wrong? The answer reveals far more than a simple argument. It exposes a deeper battle over culture, identity, trust, and the future of a relationship already facing enormous pressure. And that's where the story takes an even more dramatic turn. As the Alabama evening stretched on, the atmosphere grew heavier. Not because anyone was shouting, not because a fight had broken out, but because everyone could feel it, that invisible tension that enters a room before something happens. The kind of tension reality television cameras live for. Guests continued talking. Music played in the background. Conversations overlapped. Yet attention kept drifting toward the same two people. Rasit and Brandon. Neither man seemed fully comfortable with the other's presence. And with every passing minute, the possibility of confrontation felt less like a question and more like a countdown. For Rasit, the situation appeared deeply personal. From his perspective, he wasn't simply meeting an ex-boyfriend. He was meeting a man who still occupied space inside his relationship. A man who still had access, history, connections, shared memories, things no new partner can instantly replace. Many viewers watching at home could understand that discomfort. After all, trust is difficult enough under normal circumstances. But trust becomes even more complicated when an ex remains actively involved in someone's life, especially when cultural expectations are completely different. What one culture may consider normal friendship after a breakup, another may view as crossing a serious boundary, and that cultural divide appeared to be widening with every interaction. Then came the moment everyone had been anticipating. The conversation. No distractions. No easy exits. No avoiding the issue. According to scenes shown during the episode, Rasit directly addressed the concerns that had been building inside him. The discussion centered on Brandon's continuing role in Mallory's life and the discomfort it created. Reports indicate the exchange quickly became tense as both men defended their positions. What made the scene so compelling wasn't just what was said. It was what wasn't said. The pauses, the facial expressions, the moments where neither side appeared willing to compromise. Those silent seconds often spoke louder than the actual words. Because beneath the surface argument was a much larger question. Can a relationship survive when two people have completely different expectations about boundaries? For some fans, the answer seemed obvious. They argued that Razit's concerns were understandable. Social media, quickly filled with comments from viewers who believed any fiancé would struggle with an ex maintaining a visible presence. Supporters argued that his reaction wasn't rooted in insecurity. It was rooted in respect. They believed he was attempting to protect the relationship before deeper problems developed. But another group saw the situation very differently. Critics suggested that Mallorie had been transparent from the beginning. They argued that friendships with former partners can exist without romantic intentions. In their view, the issue wasn't Brandon. The issue was trust. And suddenly, what started as a reality television disagreement became a cultural debate playing out across the internet. TikTok clips began circulating. Reaction channels weighed in. Comment sections exploded. Some viewers sided with Rasit, others defended Mallorie, and many found themselves stuck somewhere in the middle. Because the truth was more complicated than either side wanted to admit. Relationships are rarely black and white, especially when they unfold under the pressure of television cameras. As online debate intensified, another uncomfortable reality emerged. The confrontation wasn't occurring in isolation. There were already existing pressures surrounding the couple. Distance, cultural adjustment, family expectations, public scrutiny, and the emotional burden of relocating to an entirely different country. Those pressures don't simply disappear. They accumulate. One misunderstanding becomes two. Two become five. Eventually, even small disagreements begin carrying enormous emotional weight. That is what made this confrontation feel so significant. It wasn't just about one conversation. It represented months of uncertainty, months of adaptation, months of questions that had never been fully answered. For Mallorie, the position appeared equally difficult. She found herself standing between two worlds, the life she had before, and the life she hopes to build. The challenge facing her wasn't simply choosing sides. It was finding a way to preserve both relationships without destroying either. An almost impossible balancing act. And viewers could see the emotional strain beginning to show. What made the episode particularly fascinating was how quickly perceptions shifted. At the beginning of the season, many fans had already formed opinions about the couple. But after this confrontation, those opinions began changing. People who once criticized Rasit suddenly expressed sympathy. Others, who initially supported him, started questioning whether jealousy was becoming a larger issue. The narrative was evolving in real time, and that uncertainty created something producers dream about: unpredictability, because nobody seemed entirely sure what would happen next. Would the confrontation finally clear the air? Would Brandon step back from the situation? Would Mallorie establish stronger boundaries? Or would the conflict continue growing until it threatened the entire relationship? The answers remained frustratingly unclear. And sometimes uncertainty is more powerful than certainty, because uncertainty keeps people watching, keeps people debating, keeps people emotionally invested. As the party continued and conversations slowly moved on, the visible confrontation may have ended, but the emotional consequences were only beginning. The trust issues remained, the unanswered questions remained, the cultural differences remained, and perhaps most importantly, the future of the relationship remained uncertain. Because once doubts are spoken out loud, they rarely disappear. They linger. They grow. They wait for the next disagreement, the next misunderstanding, the next test. And judging by what viewers witnessed during this episode, that next test may arrive much sooner than anyone expects. If the confrontation itself sparked tension, what happened afterward may have been even more revealing. Because in today's reality television landscape, the story doesn't end when the cameras stop rolling. In many ways, that's when the real battle begins. Within hours of the episode airing, fans across social media began dissecting every moment, every glance, every reaction, every uncomfortable pause. Viewers weren't simply discussing what happened. They were trying to determine what it meant. And that's where the debate became explosive. One side saw a man fighting for his relationship. The other saw a man struggling with trust. Neither interpretation fully erased the other. And that gray area turned the episode into one of the most heavily discussed storylines of the season. Across reaction channels and fan forums, thousands of viewers began asking the same question. How much involvement from an ex is too much? It's a question that extends far beyond reality television. In fact, relationship experts have debated similar issues for years. Some argue that maintaining friendships with former partners can demonstrate maturity and emotional growth. Others believe that continued closeness can unintentionally create confusion, insecurity, or emotional conflict inside new relationships. The challenge is that there is no universal answer. Every relationship creates its own rules, its own boundaries, its own expectations. And when those expectations aren't aligned, friction becomes almost inevitable. That reality seemed to be playing out in front of millions of viewers. What made the situation even more compelling was the cultural dimension. For many Americans watching the show, some aspects of the interaction may have appeared relatively normal. For others, especially viewers from more traditional backgrounds, the situation felt entirely different. The disagreement wasn't simply about personalities. It reflected differing views about commitment, loyalty, and relationship boundaries. And because those values are deeply personal, audience reactions became intensely emotional. Some viewers passionately defended Mallorie. Others passionately defended Rasit. Neither side appeared willing to back down. The internet had effectively become its own battleground. But beneath all the online arguments was a more human story. A story that often gets lost amid headlines and social media commentary. The emotional reality of relocation. Imagine leaving behind everything familiar. Your family, your language, your friends, your routines, your support system. Then arriving in a new country where almost every aspect of daily life feels different. That kind of transition places enormous psychological pressure on people, even under ideal circumstances. And relationships undergoing major life changes often face challenges that outsiders never fully see. Small concerns become amplified. Minor misunderstandings feel larger. Questions that once seemed manageable suddenly carry greater emotional weight. For Rasit, the pressure wasn't limited to one awkward interaction. It was part of a much larger adjustment process, a process that millions of immigrants and international partners can likely understand. That context doesn't automatically make one side right or wrong, but it does help explain why emotions appeared so intense, why concerns felt so urgent, why certain situations triggered such strong reactions. As the season moves forward, those emotional realities could become increasingly important, because unresolved tension rarely stays contained. It spreads. One disagreement influences the next. One moment of doubt affects future conversations. And before long, couples find themselves arguing about issues that extend far beyond the original problem. That's why many longtime viewers of the franchise are paying close attention, not because of one confrontation, but because of what the confrontation may represent. A warning sign, a turning point, or perhaps an opportunity. The answer remains unclear, and uncertainty continues to drive interest in the couple's future. Supporters remain hopeful. They point out that difficult conversations can sometimes strengthen relationships, that confronting uncomfortable issues may ultimately create better understanding. Critics are less optimistic. They argue that trust issues have a tendency to resurface repeatedly if they aren't fully resolved. Both perspectives carry weight.